Hey, what's up YouTube? Good to see you again. Today we're diving into a question I didn't know I needed answered until I lost 4 hours of sleep to it at 2 a.m. Stadium versus regular Overwatch. Which one is actually better? Now, before you start beefing in the comments, hear me out. Both are pretty good, but they're completely different flavors. And by the end, maybe you'll know which format really fits your playstyle best. Or, you'll just realize you're addicted to pain. Who's to say? Let's get into it. All right, first up, Stadium. The newest kid on the block. Wild, unpredictable, and honestly kind of a mad scientist experiment gone right. So let's start with the good stuff. We're talking about virtually endless matchups. Now, this is probably the biggest pro for me that I've enjoyed with Stadium is that I get to really adjust my hero however I want. There's so many different directions I get to go to from just the base character itself. So if I ever have any issues with like certain like enemy teams, or like my team is kind of doing something else and I need to play with them in a certain way, you literally have like so many options available to you. And even though you only have like 6 slots, 4 powers, like for real, the amount that you can get creative with and just make whatever you want from that hero is why I love this game mode so much. It's kind of what drew me to, some more like the utility heroes in Overwatch, like Mei, Symmetra, Torb, Sombra, or even in like the tanks, like some tanks with like wider kits, like Orisa, when she first dropped. I like being able to have options to do bunches of different play styles. So Stadium's been like a really big breath of fresh air for me. Now, I know that's not for everybody, but for the majority of Overwatch players, I think the reason we like hero-based shooters over like tactical FPS is because we have that option to use abilities, different varieties of decision-making, and different ways to express your skill in the game. Just make it for a really fresh experience. And I think Stadium just like took that to a whole new level. Next up, I want to talk about the skill ceiling. Now, obviously, we're not going to see too much of this just yet, but I do think that Stadium has raised the skill ceiling higher than what Overwatch could be. And I think that's because there is a lot more that you need to know about the game, and it shifts so often that being up to date, a lot of times just being in the know and staying up to date with Stadium can give you like a really big advantage in like knowing how all the items work together, how the abilities work together, what works, what doesn't work, what procs with what, and all that stuff. And staying up to date with that is really one of your biggest advantages that you can have. And it's knowledge, it's knowledge and how to use those to your advantage. But also like thinking on your feet, when these matches are going on, you don't have much time to figure out what to change in your kit between rounds, or even if you're like thinking ahead, constantly analyzing how this match is being played out. It almost forces you to think about the match as you're playing it, which is something not a lot of Overwatch players do in regular Overwatch. A lot of times I just see people do one play style, they just play the game, and if they don't win, then they just get frustrated by it. They're like, I don't know, I played my character really well, I got like all these picks. They don't really think about what's happening in the match to like really make them lose the match. Now in Stadium, I feel like it almost forces you to do that because you have to adapt your character every round, and it forces you to address the issue at hand and just more of just what can I do differently with my character, like position wise and like hitting more shots and stuff like that, or not feeding. It adds so many more variables to how you can address the issue. And I think it's just like it like increases the skill ceiling an insane amount. And I think we're going to see this pretty like a lot when they drop Stadium competitive. When there's actually like a leaderboard and like people start to get really competitive on it, I think we're going to see some insane players emerge from this, especially people that know how to analyze matches in Stadium or just Overwatch in general. We're going to see some amazing gameplay coming up, hopefully when competitive drops. Especially if Stadium becomes really popular, man, you're going to see a massive flux of just talent, like just raw talent in this game mode, which to me is really exciting. Next thing I want to talk about is that it's really easy for devs to add new stuff into the game, and we've already seen this kind of take place. They started adding some more global items. They added changed some powers a little bit. They slowly add these new heroes, but just being able to like tinker a little bit with these global items that you can purchase for all the heroes can massively change stadiums so quickly. Like, imagine just, next Tuesday when they do the next drop, they're just like, hey, we decided we're going to throw one new global item in Overwatch. It's going to cost 1,500 credits. So it'll be a green item, and it gives you 10% cooldown reduction. Like, you might not think that that's a lot, but that completely changes so many builds. And especially for the early game, being able to use that and for such a cheap amount, being able to use that can go so far into so many different builds. And that literally takes like 2 minutes. That's probably like the easiest job you can have as a developer. Be like, all right, how can we change Stadium to keep it fresh, in the coming month? And you're just one of the devs in the meeting. Be like, oh, let's add a green item that's 10% reduction or 10% cooldown reduction. And they're like, all right. And they're like, how long is that going to take? And they're like, 2 minutes. Just need to come up with an icon for it. I don't know. I think it's really cool that this game can shift so quickly. Because like the past 10 years of Overwatch, man, I've just been watching them. It's just introduce a new hero, try to balance them in the game, put out fires because something is always broken and the meta gets stuck. And it's just gotten so stale for me at this point that it's not really about adding new stuff into the game so much anymore. It's more about just trying to constantly balance and try to keep it fresh. When this approach, I think in Stadium, just leaves it kind of up to the players. So like the players can make it fresh for themselves by creating new builds, trying out new things, crafting new stuff. And then they can still focus on putting out fires just to make sure Stadium doesn't become completely unplayable. But you put the creativity in the players' hands, which I think is just so much more of a healthy way to handle a live service game like this. It just lets the player express their skill in a completely new way, and you don't really have to do much for it. And remember, working smarter, not harder. I'm completely fine with that. Our devs don't need to be working themselves to the bone to make this game great. So I love the idea that they get to do this stuff, and you can tell they're very passionate about this right now as well. They're very excited because honestly, I would be as well if I was a dev, because so much positive feedback, and I really don't think they're having to put much effort to keep it moving forward as they are with the regular live service game. And that kind of leads me into the next topic, is that it just always feels, I don't want to say it always feels fresh, but like anytime they make small changes, any hot fixes or any patch updates, it really does feel like the game shifts very quickly. You shake it up a little bit, and people again are trying to figure out what works for them, for their playstyle. What's kind of really good right now, and how can you counter that? That's the thing, is like it just feels fresh every time I see a new patch update. I go into Stadium and I swear, dude, there is something completely different happening every time. Like, and that's what it is. People are figuring out new builds based upon the changes that happen. And it's not just like, it's not as easy to figure out what's going to be good in Stadium like it is in normal Overwatch. So I really like that. It always feels fresh. It always keeps me on my toes, which makes the game really interesting. Now, next up, what I want to talk about is not really something we've seen just yet, but I think it has the potential to become really cool, is just how much of an opportunity this that Stadium has for deeper level of teamwork. There's so many more factors in the game, so it genuinely is going to take a lot more communication between teams to really maximize their value, which is awesome, because especially teams that are going to be like, let's say you're queuing up and you really want to get like top 100 in Stadium. You're going to have to be on your A game as far as communication goes, whether you're in text chat or voice chat. Just trying to maximize the amount of value you can get with your team, depending on their hero choices, depending on their play style, depending on your objectives, depending on what you're trying to counter. It's going to take a lot more communication. And I think that's what's going to be really exciting to watch, is to watch teams talk about how to address very unique situations every single game. It's not like you're playing Midtown for the 100th time, and they're running like a Sojourn, right? And no one can kill the Sojourn. She's just one-shotting everybody, and it's the same. I feel like it's the same solutions to the same problems every time. It doesn't really leave a lot of room to, solve issues in a different way, or let those problems kind of evolve a little bit, so you constantly have to adapt. It just gets stale, and having forcing teams to communicate. Now, like I said, we haven't seen this just yet. A lot of people are still figuring out Stadium. It's only been out for a couple months, and people are still getting used to what Stadium is. It's just starting to kind of catch on a little bit. So people are still mechanically trying to learn Stadium, or more focused on figuring out what all these items do, what the other heroes can do. And I think once we drop into competitive, it's going to ramp up really quickly as far as teams maximizing everything they can use to win the game. And especially communication is going to be absolutely paramount in the next season. And part of the reason for that teamwork that you need is that the meta just takes way longer to settle, and teams are going to have to figure out how to adjust these things before the real meta has been figured out. It takes a solid amount of time for the meta to settle in Stadium, I think, just because there are so many options that the testing for it just takes so much longer than normal Overwatch. Usually in normal Overwatch, the stats change just subtly, right? There's sometimes some new things that are added, but it never really absolutely shakes the game up. You can usually figure out what a meta is pretty quickly in normal Overwatch, and I think going forward in Stadium, it's going to take at least twice that amount of time for people to figure out what's broken in Stadium, the most broken. Sometimes I've seen it. People will think something's really broken for a week, and then we realize that something else was completely broken, the week after that, and people start running that. But then they realize that it can get hard countered by this kind of build, so it starts getting shut down. So they start adapting to a different build, and it never really feels like a meta ever gets figured out in the Stadium right now. And I do think it just takes too long. It takes too much time for people to figure that out right now, which is, for me, I think it's awesome. I love that doesn't settle. It doesn't get repetitive super quick. The only thing is maybe, a couple times, the Ash Dynamite build, the Kiriko flank, the flank clone build. Those became pretty strong pretty quick. Or the Juno blaster or Juno missile build. Those became pretty strong pretty quick. But so did a lot of other things, You think about Cassidy, Soldier, Lucio, Genji, Mei for a hot second right when the Stadium launched. Reinhardt, the Diva build going on right now. There's just so many things that are good, but people really haven't figured out what's the optimal team comp for most matchups. So I think it's cool. I think it's awesome. And finally, to sum up the pros for Stadium, I want to just talk about creative expression. I think it encompasses everything that I talked about, and that is you get to be creative in your games. That's what makes it so much fun, is that it's not just performing in a competitive environment. Now it's using your brain, trying to think outside the box, just about every match to solve problems. And I think for a lot of people that enjoy that kind of stuff, this is their favorite game mode. If you're just wanting to get really good at mechanic, being able to aim and being able to just move in a game, regular Overwatch is great, but Stadium, man, I think it just takes it to a whole new level, because you do get rewarded for aim, you do get rewarded for movement, but you also get rewarded for game knowledge a lot, and you get rewarded for risk taking, especially when you're trying to predict the enemy's next purchases or next builds. You get rewarded for taking a risk and trying to counter them presumptuously. Is just a whole nother level of skill that's I think we're going to see is really accentuated going into once the ladder drops. It's going to be really cool. So it's just a very creative game mode, and if you do enjoy creative stuff like that, not just competitive games, this is definitely the mode for you. All right, now moving on. Let's not pretend Stadium is perfect. There are a few things that I do want to talk about that hit kind of weird. First and foremost, pretty obvious, there is no hero swapping in Stadium. And this can kind of sometimes be an issue, because once you've played it long enough, you start to realize that some heroes do get hard countered, and they, if scaled, a lot of times the better matchup tank, for example, and it's mainly just been tanks lately that I've seen, is that they just can't whatever, no matter what they do, they're just not going to be able to win against the other tank. Especially, you know, if they're like even skill levels, it's going to be really hard for example, like a Rhine to win against a D.Va, you know, especially when you're Rhine and they're running like Flyers and D.Va. Like, your matchup is just like sucks. Then you're just going to get spammed out and it's going to suck. And I do have to admit that there are some matchups in the game where you really don't have any options. And it's one of those things where it's just like, it just sucks, man. And there's nothing you can really do about it. There's no such, you know, I know they're talking about bringing in like a roster, which I think will help a little bit. But a lot of times it's just tough, man. It's tough right now. You know, you're running Orisa and they're running Zarya. And Zarya just gets scaled so quickly to where you really can't do anything. You know, you're going to get cooked. You're going to get cooked in some way. Or they're running like Zarya Mei, you know, and they're both running Codebreaker. Like, you're cooked, man. So I've seen some people do pretty well at keeping up with it, but it's definitely an uphill battle. And that's something, you know, it's a pro and a con in a way, because like there is no swapping, so you don't have to play that counterwatch game. So but yeah, it leaves it up to some really let's just say shitty times in stadium, you know, when you get that hard counter. It just sucks, man. It really does. And speaking of hero swapping, there is a pretty limited hero pool in Stadium. Obviously, if you played it, you know that, but it's something I want to talk about, is that it does create a little bit less variety, right? Because you start running into the same tanks. You know, you're playing against a Reinhardt 3 matches in a row, and maybe you have like Zarya for 4 matches in a row. Especially when you have to play for like 40-minute matches, like 7 rounds, and you have to play against the same tank that entire time. It can get kind of boring in its own sense, because a lot of your playstyles won't change too much, depending on what tank you're playing against. So that's one of those things where I'm excited to see more heroes introduced, but I'm also nervous because I know new heroes mean new opportunities for them to get broken and really annoying, as we saw with, you know, Freya, for example, became really big of a problem. And like Sigma has had some like pretty good pretty good stats lately, but obviously that's been going down a little bit. But that's what I mean, is like there's always a risk, you know, and I can't say I'm not nervous about Tracer and Pharah, but we'll see when we get there. Which is kind of what I'm talking about with power creep. It leads us into our third con of Stadium, is that it's really easy for power creep to go under the radar in Stadium with these patch updates, because we see that a lot of times, like, they'll make some changes and we think certain heroes are going to be broken, but then other heroes kind of go under the radar for a few weeks, and then someone figures out a build and realizes that they're extremely broken. And even if like the dev team didn't see it coming, it's going to take them a second to respond to that. So a lot of times we'll run into issues from what I've seen, is where like a build will pop up out of nowhere, like completely out of nowhere, and then it'll just run rampant. And it can get really bad really quickly once, you know, the information spreads like that. People figure out what's really good really quick. Obviously, you know, I contribute to that in some way. You know, I'm always trying to figure out what builds are the best. Which is, by the way, if you want to make sure you subscribe, we're always dropping new builds, trying to keep up to date with all the changes, so you guys can always have the strongest builds saved to your account, so you can use them in your matches. So make sure you sub for that. But these power creep things, they can become an issue really quick, and it can really ruin the experience for a lot of people, especially if those picks are like hard counters to them. You know, if you enjoy playing Ana and flank Kiriko, so all of a sudden just pops up out of nowhere, like, you don't really get to play Ana that much, you know, or you always have to build to get your max, like your big sleep dart to always counter that. It's just, it's too much. Sometimes it can feel like too much, and you don't have, you do get locked sometimes. Even though you have plenty of options, sometimes those options aren't available yet. And I do think the roster is going to help with that a little bit, so you at least have a couple more options, but it's something we got to be wary of going forward. Now another con, I don't. This is a con for me, but I don't know if it's really bad for everybody else. It's just the fact that some matches are really, really, really long. These matches can go anywhere from like 15, 20 minutes to like 45 minutes plus. And especially if you're just like, you might realize halfway through the match, man, it's like, dude, I just don't have the energy. I'm ready to go to bed. But I still have like potentially 4 more rounds to go, and I don't know how long each of those rounds are going to be. It can get kind of exhausting sometimes thinking about that. Now, if you're just enjoying Stadium like I am, I can play it endlessly, you know. I rarely get tired of it. But there has been a couple times where I've just been ready to be done, and the match just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And maybe it started out as like 3-0 and you thought you were going to be done early, and then it's a reverse sweep, 3-3. You're in round 7, and you're just like, man, this is just too long, dude. So if you're not a fan of long matches, kind of like more League of Legends, you know, 45-minute matches, Stadium might not be your game mode. Now, I'd say like the average match in regular Overwatch is about like 20 minutes, right? I believe, or 18 or something. And personally, that for me was like the perfect amount of time for a match. I've grown to kind of enjoy the longer matches with Stadium just because I get to explore more of the builds. But that can definitely be a con for a lot of people. Moving on to number 7, that's like on the flip side of that is that the rounds are much shorter, right? So these rounds, they can steamroll very quickly, and you don't really have many opportunities to do much. Like a lot of times these games come down to like 3 fights, 3 fights, sometimes 4. And it can be like, if you don't win like the first fight, like that round might be really hard to just win. I've noticed it's really hard to like reverse motion in Stadium matches. Like if one team has just got like a good wave of coordination and they're just on a roll, it's very hard to stop that roll and completely flip it over. Which is not something you really like in regular Overwatch, that you have the opportunity to do that. Like even though they're rolling you point 1, 2, you can have a really good hold on 3 and completely change the match. In Stadium, I feel like that's less often where you really get to run that kind of match. Basically just based around the length of the match. It's just way too short to do stuff like that. All right, finally, our final point on Stadium is the wide skill matchmaking. Now, this is something that will fix itself, but I have to address it because this is what Stadium currently is. It is so wide, man. The skill difference in these matches is like kind of unacceptable. Like it's worse than quick play. I've been going matches where there are like 30,000 credit differences. There's people that do like it's tough, man. I'll go and check out profiles sometimes when I can. The worst I've seen, like I'm typically a Masters player or GM or somewhere around there, and the worst I've seen is I got matched with a silver player. Like currently a silver player, has been silver forever, and like for me that is 3 skill tiers too wide. Like I can play with a diamond player, and they can kind of understand. Plat is like a pretty much different ballpark as far as decision making goes and like strategies. You get down to gold, man. That is like I haven't been in gold since Overwatch 1 Season 1, like when the game first came out, and I haven't been there since then. Like having to play in like a competitive environment with gold players. Not that gold players are bad or anything. I actually think gold players are some of the chillest, nicest people in comms. So I love getting to play with them. But like we address problems in a different way, and it does cause a lot of friction and a lot of frustration for both myself and for them, I'm sure. Because we both probably think each other is feeding in some way, because it's just different ways to approaching the problems. And then you get all the way down to silver, man. That's no, that's just to me. That's just no. I can't do that. So there's times where that's like the wide skill matchmaking is definitely probably the thing that's been frustrating me the most. Just because I'm a hyper competitive player. I like to push the leaderboards. I like to be the best at the game. So having to do like multiple matches with a really wide skill difference between teams, like either my team or the enemy team, is just something that for right now, hopefully, we just get over, and then once comp drops, that kind of smooths over a little bit. But in its current state, that is definitely a con to playing Stadium. All right, now let's move over to the OG, regular Overwatch. The thing that we've been playing for 8 years. And the funny thing was, when I was making this list, I thought I had more to say about regular Overwatch, but the more I was going down the list, I was just like, man, I really just don't have much to say about it, which is telling in a way, but I still want to go through some points that I think are definitely important. So for the pros on regular Overwatch, number one is that it's just a more consistent experience. Now that's across the board, right? With more locked in metas, with more familiar maps, with more familiar playstyles, the experience is a lot more familiar as you play it, and it is consistent. You can expect a certain thing out of your team, the enemy team. And a lot of times, regular Overwatch is less about who makes the better plays and more about who makes the first mistake, is kind of how that is. Now, that can be a pro and a con. But I will say there is a comfort in knowing that there's a consistent experience when you get into a match that everyone's going to play in a certain way, with narrower matchmaking. It makes it just a little more chill, as you get into the game. Knowing that you're going to have at least that consistency. Number two is a bigger map pool. So this is something I've had to get used to, and I'm sad about it. This is probably the thing I get sad about the most, is that, man, there's just so much more maps, all right? After playing Stadium for the past couple months, anytime I watch somebody else playing Overwatch, like on Twitch or YouTube or whatever, I see a map, that's in the regular Overwatch. I'm like, oh my god, I haven't played on the map in forever. I forgot it existed. And then I think about all the maps in the map pool for regular Overwatch. And I'm like, geez, old dude, like Stadium, you play, if you're going round 7, I mean, you're basically playing all the maps. And it's just the same maps over and over and over again. And I will say that does get kind of annoying sometimes. Now obviously a lot of stuff overshadows that to where I don't really notice it, but man, dude, when I see regular Overwatch again, and I just get so nostalgic, and I want to go play just to go play on those maps again. I miss Nombani, I miss Kings Row, I miss Route 66, I miss Lijiang Tower, I miss Eichenwald, man. I bet you guys can't guess what my favorite game mode is, by the way. But the bigger map pool, man, is definitely probably one of the things that I miss the most, and it's definitely a pro for regular Overwatch, just in variety sakes. And speaking of variety, we also have more hero options, right? I think we're at hero 40 something. I stopped keeping track like 3 years ago, man. We're at hero something. It's bigger than 36. I know that. There's so many more heroes to choose from in regular Overwatch right now. Now, obviously, Stadium is working their way up that, but I don't think they're going to get all the heroes into Stadium anytime soon. I can't even imagine them ever getting to the point where all of the heroes are in Stadium, even though they might want to say that that's their goal. I don't see that happening. I think they're going to get capped out eventually, especially with dropping new heroes. They're going to have to make a choice. But we'll see. So I think regular Overwatch is always going to have more hero options. They'll probably do testing with the new heroes before bringing them into Stadium anyways. So if you like being able to swap between heroes a lot, obviously Stadium is not your choice. Regular Overwatch, much better for that. Just getting to express yourself as far as having a hero pool, right? Something you can switch between. And that's something I haven't gotten to do in a couple months, and I also miss that as well. But it's definitely a pro. So, all right, number 4 for the pros of regular Overwatch is shorter matches. And I talked about this earlier, but just having shorter matches makes it much easier to play more, to not get exhausted, to get a fresh, a fresh team, a fresh map, a fresh chance, every 20-ish minutes, instead of every 40 plus minutes, being stuck with, for example, just a bad team, people that aren't fun to play with, or are legitimately actively throwing, or you're just getting absolutely stomped by the enemy team, or they're playing just a really cheesy comp. Sometimes you'll have to deal with that for a really long time, and in regular Overwatch you don't have to do that. If you have a bad game, it's only going to take about 20 minutes and then you can go on to the next one. So I definitely miss the shorter matches, and that's definitely a pro. And finally, tighter matchmaking. You know, we talked about it earlier, but in regular Overwatch, in quick play and in comp, there is tighter matchmaking than Stadium. Now, they haven't come out and officially stated that, but as somebody that's been playing the game for 10 years, you can tell. You can really tell what like the spread is on skill in each match. And I think regular Overwatch kind of nailed it down for the most part. Now, there's some wide outliers when you're playing. You'll run into that sometimes, but as far as just, you know, getting a good solid match, you're not going to be playing with somebody like way outside your skill level like you are in Stadium. But I'm hoping they bring that to Stadium coming next season, so I'm really excited about that, because man, do I miss having just 4 other people on my team that just know how to play the game like I do, and we can communicate with each other effectively and make decisions, and we don't have to, you know, explain ourselves that much to each other. You can just talk about the game. I really do miss that going into the Stadium matches. Now, there has been a couple times where we've gotten some pretty high MMR games, and it's been great, man, which makes me so excited for comp Overwatch or Stadium. Is that those games really show me what it's going to look like, you know, these high-level lobbies. But, man, are they few and far between. Usually I'm getting queued up with, Stinky Butt 49, who just downloaded Overwatch, placed high silver, low gold, and they're trying out Stadium for the first time. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I run into that I am I'm kind of done with, you know. I'm ready for the next a little bit more seriousness. All right, and let's talk about the cons. Again, kind of a shorter list on regular Overwatch, but there are some pretty big things that really push me to play Stadium more often, that I've just gotten kind of just tired of over the years of regular Overwatch. Let's start with number 1, is that Counterwatch is real. It's very real. You know, people will complain about it. People say that, oh, this is just Counterwatch. But man, dude, when we shifted to 5v5, because I used to be a tank player, dude. For those that don't know, I used to be a tank man for like 5 years. And I left playing I left tank behind once Overwatch 2 dropped. I played it for a week and I immediately went to DPS. Counterwatch is absolutely real in this game, and it can get really annoying because that's not the game I want to play. You know, it's a very surface level gameplay thing. It's very like checkers, you know, versus what Overwatch used to be like chess, you know, which is really annoying. You know, you can memorize these counters all day long if you want, you know. Zarya, you go Winston for that. If you're running Orisa, you know, you go Zarya for that. You go, if you're running like Reinhardt, you can go, or they're running Reinhardt, you can go Diva, you can go Orisa if you want to bully him. There's just so many different matchups, you know, and it's just like, it really is Counterwatch. It's just, you go this, I go this. You go this, I go this. You go this, I go this. And you guys see it all the time. It's infuriating. And not that only exists for tank players. That also exists for DPS players. That also exists for supports. You guys know your own Counterwatch game that you have to play constantly. And it's just boring. it's really boring. It's a very simple, not intuitive, not creative way to play the game. And it's encouraged in regular Overwatch. But it's not, obviously you can't in Stadium, and I just love that there's just that hard line. You know, it's like Counterwatch does not happen. You do not like just constantly switch around with no penalty. And there really isn't too much of a penalty for switching like that. Going into number 2, there's just less room for skill expression in my opinion. There is certain things you can play, and obviously you can get really good at aiming, like you can get really good mechanically. You can get really good at game sense, and those are about it. Like that's all you can do. You get good at mechanics, you get good at game sense, and that's it. And it's those two things obviously combined make some of the best players. But I think having room for just like overall knowledge, but also being able to like think on your feet and react very quickly to situations, not just mechanically, but also like in your decision making, but also being able to take risks more often and gamble a little bit on what's going to happen. I think adding that extra layer of skill on top in Stadium has really made it shine. And anytime I go back and play regular Overwatch, I get bored really quick, man. I'll play a few games. I'm like, yeah, this is fun. And then like after a little bit, I'm like, is this it? Is this like all I can do to like contribute to the game? Like contribute to my win is just hit shots and like, you know, calm economy, you know, and just keep track of what they're using. And like something that like that used to like keep me super entertained. Now that I know what Stadium's like, just kind of bores me a little bit. Which leads me to my next point, that repetition sets in really fast. Like I said, within 3 games. You know, that comes with the metas, you know. A lot of times either metas or like Counterwatch, the repetition can get really annoying very quickly. This is what I talked about with Stadium, is that the meta takes a pretty long time to settle. And I think going forward, it is going to take a long time to settle. That it's going to keep the game fresh. And with regular Overwatch, that has always been an issue, that the meta kind of gets figured out in like a week and a half or like 2 weeks. And then you are stuck with it, dude, for like a month and a half. And it can make playing Overwatch really hard, man. When you're playing against Mercy, Sojourn, Winston, Tracer every day for, what, 6 months? 7 months? How long have they been meta, dude? I'm just sick of it. I really am. Just whatever variation they want to come up with, that's dive, and Mercy is involved in there, and Tracer or Doomfist or Sojourn. Like, I'm fine with playing against that for a few weeks, but man, dude, does that get annoying after a while? Especially if those aren't like heroes that you play. But even if they're heroes you play, I know people that get stuck playing Sojourn for months, and they're just like, dude, I am so tired of having to play Sojourn to win games. It's just like, I feel absolutely chained to it. And I feel like that's something that's going to happen less often in Stadium, which I actually had a note on this list, which I already talked about, and I literally just put Sojourn exists. Because, man, ever since Season 2 of Overwatch 2, man, it's just been Sojourn, right? And it's one of those things where it's just like, dude, I don't know how you can let a character go rampant for so long. Make it, it's like she's either absolutely broken, or they nerf her to where she's unplayable. But they've left her so broken for so many stretches of time that it's just gotten a little annoying for me as a player. And we don't have that in Stadium right now, so boom, there's a plus. And finally, the growth potential for regular Overwatch seems like it's plateaued. I don't really see normal Overwatch bringing in much more of a community. I feel like there's a very dedicated, diehard audience for Overwatch, regular Overwatch, but I don't see that growing anytime soon. It is because we have better, like, I don't want to say better options, but there's games that have done a better job at capturing that audience that plays that, whether it's in, you know, Valorant or Marvel Rivals or, you know, just some MOBAs, even like League of Legends. I just think that the audience for Overwatch has plateaued. And that's it. And I don't really think regular Overwatch is going to be the way to the future for what Overwatch can be. And on the flip side, I feel like Stadium definitely has potential. Now, doesn't mean it is going to be the future, but I think it has a pretty high potential to bring in a new audience and really change Overwatch, which is what has gotten me so excited about the future of the game. So, which one is better? Honestly, it's going to depend. And I know I hate that answer. But here's why I want to talk about this. If you want a structured, predictable, and deep mechanical matchups, regular Overwatch is still your go-to. It's a classic for a reason. But if you're craving something new, chaotic, creative, Stadium is a breath of fresh air. It rewards game knowledge, creativity, and good vibes, at least for now. We'll see. And for a lot of us, that's enough to make it worth the switch. But at the end of the day, the best version of Overwatch is the one you're having fun with. Now, if you want to know what my personal favorite is, if it wasn't obvious during this video, 100% Stadium right now. I love Stadium so much more than regular Overwatch. That does not mean it's better than regular Overwatch, but I definitely think, especially as a veteran of Overwatch, having something that's fresh and exciting and that hasn't felt like it's just been throwing a bone for us, something that the devs actually care about and are investing in, it's really nice to have that there. So I'm very excited for Stadium going forward. All right, that's it for this one. If you tried both Stadium and regular Overwatch, let me know which one you prefer in the comments. I'm seriously curious about what like the community is thinking right now, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Drop a like if you vibe with the breakdown, sub if you're new, and hit the bell so you don't miss more Overwatch content. We got builds, updates, and more chaos on the way. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.